So greatest NFL rivalry, not to put you on the spot. Perloff has...
I mean, go ahead.
We'll tell you who we came up with.
I have Washington, Dallas.
And I have Steelers, Ravens.
Well, I'll just chip in with, I think the Packers Bears is the oldest rivalry, and they're different places. I mean, if you've ever gone to a game in Green Bay, you know that you have to bring something that, like a block that goes under your feet, or else they're going to freeze on the concrete, right? It's a different place. It's just there's bleachers. When you sit in bleachers at your kid's game, right? You sit at bleachers at Lambeau Field. The cold of football, the grit of football, the history, the age of the rivalry, I think that one can be taken for granted. And it's been obviously one-sided lately with the quarterback.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers being in Green Bay, but it's hard to beat that just for the history. I think you have to mention it.
There you go. You can vote right now at Maggie and Pearl about the greatest rivalry. All right, before we get to the tiers, 2 more news things for you we'd love to get your take on. Another rivalry we didn't see developing, and that would be Sean Payton v. Aaron Rodgers. Sean Payton sort of went out of his way in USA Today to take some shots at the Jets and specifically at Nathaniel Hackett. Rodgers came to the defense of a guy he called as probably the greatest coach he's ever played for in the NFL. His favorite coach.
The most fun coach. I don't think he ever used the word great coach.
No, sorry. I think he said favorite coach that he's played for in the NFL. Mike, what did you see behind the Peyton comments? Clearly, the Rodgers defense seems pretty straightforward. But what did you make of the Peyton comments to begin with?
It seems like Sean Payton, since he left New Orleans, has just become Sean Payton unfiltered, and just kind of increasingly willing to just say whatever he wants to say. And I felt that way even before he officially took the Denver job. There was some kind of a media opportunity, or he's doing a podcast with somebody, and he was just casually mentioning that he had been in touch with some of the Russell Wilson's teammates on the team, running backs, guys he knew. When everyone knew, he was kind of in the mix. And so I feel like, I don't think he necessarily misspoke when he talked to Jarrett Bell. He knows what he's doing. And Jarrett Bell of USA Today had the story. And I think he was just used to being unchecked. He goes to Denver. Who's in charge of him, right? He's over the GM. He's over everybody. He just kind of does and says what he feels. So I thought it was great that Rodgers said, wait a minute, you're not doing this to us. And Rodgers has the standing to actually push back. So I thought it was really uncalled for by Peyton. And usually, we've seen coaches light each other up. It's usually like talk about rivalries like a Sam Weiss, Jerry Glanville. They hate each other. Someone ran up the score, hot tempers. This was just like out of the blue. Hackett's taking bullets that he wasn't even expecting.
Mike, talking about guys who'll say whatever they want and think they're kind of above everyone else. Owner Jim Irsay in Indianapolis fired off a lot of shots after meeting with Jonathan Taylor. Basically says the NFL will move on without him or without Jonathan Taylor. Is there any defense for Jim Irsay saying something? The only thing I will say, Mike, is it's the same reality. They're not going to pay running backs. So I'm not sure, regardless of these sort of tactless comments, there's really nothing that can be done here to make it all work.
I really dislike the comments. Look, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. If Jonathan Taylor or his agent have been totally out of line and you're frustrated, that's fine. Keep that. That's behind closed doors, right? There's private discussions here. You should be making everyone on your team feel important and feel included and all of that. Why would you say, of course, if the whole league ended tomorrow, the world would go on, right? But it would be a bad thing. So I don't get that at all. It's like, why do you need to diminish Jonathan Taylor, who up until recently, everything's been great? I mean, there's a little contract tiff, big deal. Jim Irsay's been through 1,000 of them. I thought that was really bad.
Mike Sando, The Athletic, is joining us now. Let's get to the quarterback tiers, because this is an article everyone looks forward to. It's a lot of fun. So tier 1, I don't think I'm giving much away here, but Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and then rounding out tier 1, Mike, is Justin Herbert. Can you describe what pushed Herbert into tier 1, considering he's never won a playoff game?
Right. So he actually fell. He was in tier 1 last year and slipped a little bit. Some people were like, all right, the team success you alluded to at a certain point you're accountable for. I think when you look at their team, statistically, I believe they were 28th in combined defense and special teams. If you look at the 4 teams that were below them the last 2 years from that, they're 51, 84, and 1. They're big losers. The Chargers aren't great, but they're 19 and 15. You ask why? Well, they've got a different quarterback. It was rough last year. I think that was reflected with the coordinator change. Obviously, they had a lot of injuries. Chargers often do. I think when people look at Justin Herbert and watch him play, they see a tier 1 player. So they're probably betting on a little bit more of the upside than they would for some other guys. But everyone who plays against him comes away impressed, like really impressed with his kind of athleticism is better than they thought. He's a huge guy. And I agree. He probably needs to prove it a little more, but I think that speaks to his talent.
Mike, the name that stood out to me in Tier 2 is former MVP Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Yeah. I understand he's coming off an injury, but I'm curious, what do you expect when you do the list next year after he has a new coordinator in Todd Monk and a more of a passing-oriented coordinator? Do you think Lamar is going to take that next step as a passer and get back into Tier 1?
Well, he has not yet been in Tier 1. So he got to the top of Tier 2, but really in Tier 1, the definition of Tier 1 includes a clause that I think is really important, which is you've got to be able to expertly handle pure passing situations. And what that means is, at the end of the day, even for the great dual threat quarterbacks, the game in the playoffs, in the toughest moments, gets kind of reduced down to you being able to beat the other team from the pocket passing the ball. The other stuff melts away. The run game stuff melts away. And we've seen that for him in the postseason. So I think he's going to be in much better position to be better as a passer with the weapons they have, with the scheme change. But I don't know how much I would bet that is that going to unlock him, or could it also expose that, hey, there were some reasons they played to his strengths as a runner. So I think that's where people are a little bit split. They're anxious to see. He was pretty much stable from last year in the quarterback tiers. People his average vote got just a fraction better. So I think people are just waiting to see how it goes, and we don't really know. Could they go to more of a pass offense? It doesn't work, and then they kind of go back to what they've always done. If they do that, he's still a strong Tier 2 quarterback. I mean, you're going to win a ton of games with him.
Mike Sando is our guest. He's NFL writer for The Athletic. At quarterback tiers right now, it's a must-read every time this time of year with the quarterback tiers. Now, I was a little surprised, Mike, that Tua was in Tier 3. I understand why, right? Because the availability is a big part of, is a part of this. But, when Tua is healthy, you could make an argument that he is a Tier 2 quarterback. So were you surprised with Tua falling where he's nestled in between Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo?
I'm not surprised because I've been doing this for 10 years with the quarterback tiers, so I know how people think. But it is a fair question when you start about dividing the credit up, right? But who gets the credit? And you have players that have been in real extreme situations. Tua coming into the league, the Dolphins don't even really have a plan for him. Their coaching staff is trying to get Ryan Fitzpatrick ready. They don't have a line. They don't have weapons. Then you pivot the whole other way to where now they've loaded up. He's got the best receivers in the league. He has a really creative designer. I think what people looked at, and the reason he didn't go higher beyond the durability, is they see it having to be very schemed up and very timed up. If he can throw on time to big windows where these guys have a lot of separation, his accuracy really shines. What people don't believe yet until they see it is when that's disrupted, which is probably inevitable, either through talent attrition or defenses having another year to sort of prepare for this offense. They don't think that he can do that as well when the circumstances just aren't perfect around him.
Mike, I know you've been doing the tiers for a while now, and I'm curious. It amazes me. Tier 4, I'll just give one name who's in Tier 4 is Brock Purdy, who had so much success last year. How many quarterbacks do you think could win a Super Bowl this year? I mean, some people say you need to be like 5 or 6 guys, but there's some really high-end names as you go down this list.
So I see it as, if you look, Tier 1 is all AFC. All those guys you mentioned are AFC. So, I really do think that the AFC guys have a harder time getting to the Super Bowl, but once they get there, a better time of winning it. I think the NFC ones, like Purdy, Purdy's obviously not an established passer, but he's on a really good team. Like, to me, Purdy could get to the Super Bowl in the NFC. He's not going to be, he might have to go through Jalen Hurts again, but he's not going to have to go through, Burrow, Mahomes, whatever. By the time they get to the NFC Championship game or NFC Championship game, maybe the Eagles got knocked off in an upset, right? So the path to get there for a Purdy or NFC, to me, is open. I just don't think those guys are going to win it, because you're going to be staring down Mahomes at the end of that. And good luck, right? I mean, Mahomes last year with a hurt ankle, they obviously lost Tyreek Hill. I mean, it's like, what can you do to slow this guy down? Their defense was okay. Special teams were terrible. I mean, he wins anyway.
Mike Sando joining us. Last one for you, Mike. I mean, your biggest surprise on this list, you mentioned you've been doing this for a decade. Was there anything specifically about this list that you found unique?
Yeah, the thing that surprised me was that Kirk Cousins moved up a little bit. I mean, he's always kind of been sort of a 2, sort of a 3, but he moved into the bottom of tier 2. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, it wasn't like he had a better statistical year. Were these voters overvaluing all those close games they won, right? Remember, they had that unsustainable record in the close games. And then I looked it up. He had 8 fourth-quarter game-winning drives. If you go on Pro Football Reference, you can see that. That's tied for the most in a season since 1960. So maybe we got to give him credit for that, right? That's a little bit of a quarterback thing. So, we tip our cap to Kirk Cousins, who we know everything about. We don't think he's suddenly way better, but, him moving up into tier 2 was something I didn't anticipate.
By the way, every quarterback, there's great art on this article on theathletic.com. You have to go check it out. Every quarterback is in uniform except for one. Jimmy G is wearing a black suit and a black shirt. And if we're doing handsomeness tiers, this isn't even close. It's Jimmy G by a mile. But the funny thing, too, is you can't get him in a uniform because the guy hasn't been in a uniform.
Oh, I know. I went out to the Raiders, I think it was when we learned that he was injured or something for that off-season camp. And, of course, the Raiders are like New England West now, so the practice field's like 10 miles away from the reporters are standing. But you were like, is that Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? I don't think anyone's gotten a clear picture of him in his jersey yet.